Hi there, knife people, rejoice, lady and gentlemen. There is a new baby in Benchmade family. So who are the happy parents? Introducing Mr. and Mrs. Automatic, Claymore, and Infidel. And please don't ask me to define which one is which. Let's take a look at the baby in its crib.
So very gorgeous.
And that was my first reaction to let's unswaddle and look to see why I almost didn't buy the knife. How many olive drab knives does the world actually need? I know they're gearing it toward the military, but let's be honest, military guys still like lanyard holes and glass breakers, especially the ones on active duty that may actually use a glass breaker, although they probably won't mind the horrendous trigger pull on this thing. Let's measure that objectively. All I need is a low-tech fish scale and a little bit of chicken wire. Let's see it again. I get 3.5 kilos or 7.7 pounds of pull. Let's measure the pull on the Infidel. Let's take a second look. 2.5 kilos or 5.5 pounds. What your thumb is experiencing is pressure. So to calculate the pressure you need to exert to deploy these blades, we needed to measure the area of engagement right here and right here. And what I got for the Claymore OTF and Infidel, it's obvious the area on the Claymore is smaller and on the Infidel is larger. And I'm not going to get into how serrations feel. Let's just base it all or approximate it all based on the area. So the area for the Claymore OTF is 0.139 inches square. And for the Infidel is 0.17 inch square. So doesn't seem like a huge difference, but bear with me. And the force was 7.7 pounds. And for the Infidel, it was only 5.5 pounds. So we need to divide 7.7. We're going to divide by 0.139, which gives us 55.47 PSI. And for the Infidel, we're going to divide 5.5 by 0.17, and it will give us only 32.4 PSI. That is a 42% increase in the felt pressure. This knife feels twice as hard to operate than this one. The blade length is identical, just under 4 inches, and about 1/4 of an inch longer than on Claymore. Also size-wise, it compares to a Microtech full-length knives, like this Glycon, for example. It is 2 full ounces lighter than the Infidel, which is significant, about 60 gram difference, and almost an ounce lighter than the out the side Claymore. I would say that in itself is an incredible achievement. Let's talk price. Out of all Benchmade lineups, I think their OTFs are the most reasonably priced. They're not cheap, but comparing to other US-made OTFs, other than Kershaw Livewire, these are priced reasonably, not cheap. $400 MSRP on this one and $325 to $350 depending on the model on the Shootout. Now, most retail outlets online and brick and mortar sell them for 10% discount, which is the MAP, minimum advertised price. But a lot of people are not aware of the fact that Benchmade and some cool retailers, like for example Blade HQ, offer a 30% discount off of the MSRP to the military, retired military, police, and first responders if they can prove their identity via a website such as ID.me. Another important thing to understand about all these Benchmade knives, materials. For example, this new Claymore has a grivery handle. Some people say grivery, but I heard Benchmade refer to it as grivery. So grivery material is it's a glass impregnated plastic, but I don't have it on the table, but some of their knives come in CF Elite. To you, visually, there'll be almost no difference. CF Elite uses carbon fiber, which is both lighter and tougher than the glass fiber. And for some reason, it's a little bit cheaper in the case of the shootouts. So shootout CF Elite is like $25, that's the $25 difference. Now these knives have crew wear, which is barely stainless, but extremely tough and hard, or able to be hardened hard steel. It's basically what MagnaCut is without the extreme corrosion resistance. Other parameters are very similar to the MagnaCut. All current Claymores are produced with CPM D2 steel right there. So what does that mean? I get a lot of comments on my video how crappy D2 is. First of all, D2 was never crappy. It was a super steel only 15, 20 years ago. And the premium knives were made with D2. And I have a few of those Benchmade. Now, what gave D2 bad rap, basically, is the cheap version of that steel that comes from the People's Republic. And I don't even think it's the steel so much as the heat treatment or lack of proper annealing. Now, I don't want to digress too far, but if you are on my channel, you would have seen the tests that I did to the full-size and mini Claymore, made also out of CPM D2 steel, and I'll explain what that means. And they are absolutely some of the strongest, toughest knives out there. I did the tree stabs, batoning, and so forth. Now, what is CPM D2 versus D2? CPM stands for Crucible Powder Metallurgy. Crucible is a company that makes a whole slew of industrial steels, including the MagnaCut. CPM, so what is powder metallurgy? Powder metallurgy is the method by which the steel is composed and produced, which is different from the traditional method of melting ingredients together, then pouring them into an ingot, which is a big block of steel, and then rolling a flat plate out of them. Powder steels are formed into thin plates bypassing the ingot stage, so there's no rolling and stretching on the molecular level, and all the ingredients are mixed in a very correct proportion when they are in the furnace being sort of cooked together. You can visit Steel Nerd's website or watch Steel Nerd's videos where Dr. Laren Thomas talks about that. Bottom line is, if you take basic old D2, even at its best heat treat, Dr. Laren Thomas's experiments show that the toughness on the CPM D2, like these knives, is 300% above the toughness of the basic D2. So you get, instead of 4 foot-pounds strength, you getting a 12 foot-pound strength on these, which brings them not quite to the crew wear level like on the shootout, but it puts them above such famous steels as CPM 154 and definitely above 154 CM, which is an ingot version. Let's talk about that blade for a minute. So the blade is a chisel grind, meaning it's only sharpened on one side. And as you can see, it's a typical Benchmade edge, pretty rough sharpening media here, and it's very toothy. What I'm not planning to do is resharpen this blade. And here's the reason why. And it's also the reason why I actually purchased this knife. I almost walked away from it. I almost got away. Here's the reason. So recently, Benchmade stopped doing these 1 out of 1,000 kind of markings on the blade. But the first 1,000 knives in a new series gets this symbol here. And you can see it on the box. Show you here, first production under the batch number, under the barcode. So I collect Benchmade, and so the knives that have first production, Benchmade knives that have first production markings, don't get tested and abused or resharpened, because I think these are collectible. They are not going to bring huge amount of trade-in power or money if you decide to sell it, but it's definitely an advantage and a bonus to a collector to have a knife with this marking. I think this diversion is worth of your time. So this is how the original first production marking would look like on a Benchmade knife. They would give you which serial number out of the limited first production series it was. And I believe now they mark first 1,000. Here's a 67 butterfly. To an avid Benchmade collector, here's a dagger. To an avid Benchmade collector, something like that means something. At a minimum, you will get your money worth if you decide to sell it. I sometimes buy, if I see two side by side, I'll buy both of them and then trade one. So to me, grabbing a knife, walking into a store and finding a first production knife, it's an absolute joy. I love that. I didn't just go and ordered limited edition, I found it. Now, the reason I say found it, because dealers have zero ability to actually specify to Benchmade that they want first production. So when Benchmade sends their knives into the universe, it's a drove of luck. Some dealers get them and some don't. And I've seen very large dealers that are not getting them, and very tiny little dealers like obscure surplus store in San Francisco, California, having two first production. They have no control. So that's why I think they're more premium. Which brings me back to why this knife is not going to be tested at a Tree of Doom. Sorry to disappoint you, but I already tested this knife, and in this area here, I measured the blade thickness to the approximate depth where I stab it into the tree, and at that depth it's about 50 thousandths thick, whereas this knife at this depth is actually 60 thousandths thick, even though that the blade stock is 20 thousandths thinner. This is 100 thousandths thick, and this one is 120 thousandths thick. So do I think this knife would fail? No, but it's a prized collectible, and I am not willing to risk it. Sorry. And this is the mini Claymore, which I stabbed even harder than the full-size one because I did two tests with this knife. And as you can see, there's no damage, and it's also powder D2. Let's look at the cutting performance. This blade has slopes on both sides. The primary bevel on both sides is about 15 degrees. And then the secondary bevel on the sharpened side is at about 3 to 4 degrees more. So overall, on this side, it's about 18 or 19 degrees. And on this side, it's 15. So add them up and you get 33 34 degree cutting angle, which is pretty darn sharp. It's the same as sharpening a regular blade on both sides to about 16.5 degree angle. Should be a pretty slicey knife. And imagine if I was willing to hone and strop this edge, it would cut pretty darn well. So kudos to Benchmade. Even though it looks a little rough, because of the angle, it cuts really well. A very likely reason for you to watch this video is because you're trying to decide if Claymore OTF is worth the money you're going to spend to put it in your pocket. For another $100, you could go to a more premium. Let me show you the current version. This is 2023 limited edition, which turned out to be not so limited, of the Infidel. Comes in different colors. That is right around $400 right now. Would you really prefer plastic over aluminum and beautiful colors that it comes in? Seriously doubt it. Performance-wise, these knives will be about the same, because while CPM D2 is tougher than S30V by about 30% tougher, this knife is actually 25 thousandths thicker, or 25% thicker than this knife. So toughness-wise, they will balance out. The edge is identical. The puncture or penetration performance will be identical. And this one is more ergonomic because it has a 40% lighter switch here, and it actually feels your hand better. So if money is not much of an issue to you, anyway, if you're going after the premium feeling, this is not your knife. To be honest with you, a $200 Kershaw Livewire feels more premium because of the materials they chose to make it out of, including MagnaCut and aluminum scales. And it functions as softly as the Infidel. If you want robustness and sort of go to war performance, the basic Claymore will do the trick. And if you're looking for EDC performance, Benchmade is kind of competing with itself here, because Shootout, and especially this year, it's coming out in a drop point blade, which I haven't seen yet in person. That will outperform a dagger-shaped OTF anytime. It's going to be a lot more slicey. And CPM Crewwear is actually another 30% tougher than the CPM D2. So you see, I'm building the ladder here. In fact, last night, a good friend of mine, a younger good friend of mine, texted me and asked which reasonably priced OTF I would recommend. While I had Claymore in my pocket, I recommended Kershaw Livewire. And as I said a little bit earlier, I already disassembled this knife, and I found nothing in there that would differentiate it from any other OTF. In fact, I still say this is going to be a lot easier to maintain. So take it or leave it, go buy it or don't buy it, I don't care. I am not going to buy like a daily carry version of it, because this is just a collectible piece of Benchmade memorabilia with a first production marking on the blade.